The declaration is a statement, first of all, but it is more than that. It is one of the strongest statements that we can make in our using language. It states things from the perspective of an outcome, as if it had already happened. And that's what gives it its strength, because it evokes within you the feeling that you've already, that pretentious attitude that you've already accomplished it. And that's what is supposed to give you that feeling of, yeah, I can do this, I can relate to this, I can. And it's usually stated in I'm going to say a positive slant. So in other words, a declaration doesn't say what you don't want, it says what you do want. Vodka. We have a potato vodka place that has a really smooth 100 proof potato vodka, and mix that with gin, like 50-50, and sip that. All your problems go away.
Until the next day when you have extra problems.
I never, honest to Pete, you two, I've never, ever in my life been sick from alcohol. And I've never, ever in my life experienced a hangover. I don't know what that is.
That sucks.
I have no idea what that is.
I'm going to hit delete now. I'm deleting Mark from my life.
Okay.
I would have been a great alcoholic because
Yeah.
I have no idea what that feels like. I do not.
Well, I wasn't going to talk about this, but I think I'm going to now. Because, okay, so today we're talking about declarations, right? And
we are.
A year ago, last August, I had a few too many, way too many, not even a few too many, way too many. And I was so uncomfortably on the edge of being sick. Like literally going outside every 20 minutes to go sit on the porch to get fresh air. Otherwise, I knew I was going to be sick. Mm. That night, I said, I'm going to quit drinking for 30 days. Because I didn't like the way I acted. I didn't like the way I felt. I just knew that I needed to do something different than that. And I'm like, I don't feel good about myself. I'm going to take a month off. It was hard. It was hard to take that break. And not that I don't consider myself even close to an alcoholic, but I enjoy the occasional beverage here and there. And now you've got people who have a glass of wine with dinner, and you're like, yeah, no, I'm not going to partake today. There's just kind of like a constant battle with yourself. But because I declared that I wasn't going to do it for a month, and I didn't just declare it to myself, I declared it to my wife so that somebody else outside of me would know this and be supportive of it. I stuck to it. I did it for about, and it got easier as I went along, but I stuck to it for probably about 5 weeks, even though 30 days was the date that I had determined. But yeah, there's like a constant like toing froing in my head with, oh yeah, well, it's just, it's just dinner. It's just, a family event, or, we're having guests over. So, it's just one, but I stuck to it. I was proud of myself after I finished.
Good job. You could do something there that a lot of people can't. So it's consider it a practice run for anything else that might come up.
Curious, because I know I've done that in my time as well. And it's interesting when you let other people know, because part of the declaration is you share that with others. This is my choice, and this is what I'm doing for myself. And there's sometimes pressure. Oh, well, just one. Like, you're not going to have one. Like, it's Christmas holidays. Like, you can't do it then. Like, and so there's a lot of, there's a bit of uncomfortableness, I notice, when you start to making these statements about how you're going to take care of yourself, whether it's as you know, with my health, I've had to make some really big changes around my food intake and not that I was a terrible eater, but because of my situation, I have to eat differently in order. And I don't know if I told you this, Mark, but I started eating differently in October from my cholesterol. It was very high. And I went to a heart health class, and they kind of said, don't beat yourself up if after 6 months it hasn't corrected. It takes time. So I kind of went into the doctor's office with a resignation that, okay, I've been good. I followed everything that, they recommended. They obviously said from time to time, have a piece of pizza kind of thing. But I went in thinking, okay, it's not going to be that great. Hopefully it'll be better. Maybe I'm going to have to go on cholesterol pills. And when she opened up my blood work, she said, you have no red flags. And I thought, is that a good thing? And she said, yeah, my cholesterol was normal again. So,
Awesome.
But again, over that 6 months, there was a period of time where people are like, they start beating themselves up. I got to do better. I said, no, this is about me. I have to do this. This is a life-saving choice I need to make. I said, I'm really wanting, as you know, Mark, when you walked me through the declaration, maybe we should introduce what a declaration is after this, but you have a very cool practice. And when I did that with you to try it out, I think it was almost 3 years ago. And what I wrote on the piece of paper, and it's never left me. I had it on my fridge for a long time, but I don't need that piece of paper up. It says, I'm healthy, vibrant, and strong inside and out. And so, Ian, your point that, it's been this kind of journey with my declaration, right? I haven't been able to sustain it always, but it's in my psyche now about how I want to show up, how I want to treat myself, how I want to treat my body, how I want to show up. So it's been interesting. And so again, the 2x4 last fall, okay, your blood work, you have for the first time in your life, pretty high cholesterol. It was that another kind of reminder. And I went right back to that declaration, Mark, and said, well, there you go. It's inviting me to live every day now, make some choices in this area of my life to be healthy, vibrant, and strong inside and out. So it's kind of been my anchor, is what I would say to you, Mark, for that, in that experience that you walked us through. So do you want to open up, Mark, talk about what a declaration is? It's part of the Speech Act. So we're finishing up with the 5 ways we make action happen in language. And declarations is one that we wanted to talk about.
Well, the declaration is a statement, first of all. So it doesn't start with a verb. So to be technical, it's a statement. But it is more than that, is one of the strongest statements that we can make in our using language. It states things from the perspective of an outcome, as if it had already happened. And that's what gives it its strength, because it evokes within you the feeling that you've already, that pretentious attitude that you've already accomplished it. And that's what is supposed to give you that feeling of, yeah, I can do this. I can relate to this. And it's usually stated in I'm going to say a positive slant. So in other words, a declaration doesn't say what you don't want. It says what you do want. So for example, a declaration would not typically be, I'm going to quit smoking. A declaration would be more like, I am healthy. As a result, I need to quit smoking. So it gives you the outcome. A declaration is something we can rally around, either individually or a collective. And it has that power to rally, whether it's your own self with your committee and your little voice and everything that accompanies you, or people around you. It aims at clarity, for sure. So because it aims at clarity, it requires some thought before you blurt it out, so to speak. I like the equation. Your thoughts lead to feelings, lead to actions, lead to results, and usually your results are in the form of a declaration, and the whole process leading up to it helps you sometimes form that strong declaration. And I'm going to stop there. I have so much more to say, but this interactive, so I want to give you guys a chance to add into it.
Well, I think there's something I want to add in is that the declaration isn't an action plan. it's the desired result. And having, and so you don't need to necessarily know how you're going to feel healthy, vibrant, and strong inside and out. That's my intention. So your intentionality brought into your day will cause you to think differently about the actions that you're taking, so that you're like, okay, if that really is my mantra and that's really what I'm anchored to, I'm not going to order the fries today. Like it's just that it's like a subliminal checkpoint that will keep you more on track than if you hadn't gone through the process, come up with your declaration, and then kind of blindly gone through your days.
I love the idea that it's considered, it's going to sound really crazy, but it's considered done already. So that, and it has a larger container. It's not this confined, like the example, I want to lose weight versus I want to be healthy and vibrant in my body. So it allows a broader way of looking at something. And that could be part, as you said, it's part of what do I need to do that? What's the first thing that I'm ready to tackle to make that happen from? What do I need to shift would be a cool word to say. And there was the second book that Paul Lefebvre, my mentor, threw across the table that day, the first day I met him. The first one was the Matthew Budd, You Are What You Say, which is where we learned about declarations, or I learned about declarations. But the second one was a book written by Ben Zander, and it was called The Art of Possibility. And he threw that one across the table and dared me to read it and, consider trying out the practices in there. And there's a part of the chat, because he was a conductor, so he had an orchestra. All these musicians were at the top of their game, top. So he had the best of the best in the world. And he found when they came there, they had so much performance anxiety, so much goal, they wanted to win, that it was affecting their performance. And he did this practice, which I wanted you to tell me if this made sense to you, because you did see the video a few times, about giving an A versus getting an A. They all wanted to get an A. And he shifted the way of looking at that is, instead of living up to the A, to live into the A, that you've already got it. So what would that look like on day one? And what he did is he got them to write a letter to themselves the first day in the class, as if it's the last day of the class, so they could write their future self about what that was like for them. And that he starts the year that everybody gets an A, which is totally 180 shift of what we learned in the educational system, what we've learned in performance, making goals and performance. Like, it really shook me. Another one that went, whoa, this is a bit of a ground shifter here. And I feel like the declaration, the way we go about it, and what Marc taught us, really, to me, that felt the same way, Marc. It was a bit of a ground shifter. No longer was it New Year's resolutions, making goals. It was this container or shift that I had described in my own words that I was living into. I already had it. It was already in me. It was already emerging. And then just discerning, what does that look like right now? What does that look like day one? What does that look like day two? I love what you said, Ian. The choice I make today, like it could be as small as that, or as big as, going to the gym and committing to a regime of a personal trainer. It could be as big or small, but I was driving it through a larger statement. And I felt that Ben Zanders was that 180 shift as well. Rather than trying to get the A, you already got the A, now live into that A.
I like Ben. I like what you said, Ian. It's not an action plan. An important follow-up to a declaration is a clear understanding as to why. It's not enough to have the declaration. You need to know why you want it. Now that why is not an action plan, but it's a call to action. So it's a call to that action, because very often we'll put forward a declaration and it's a very strong one and it's a meaningful one. And it might also be a hard one. So if I say I want $1 million in my bank account, well, that's going to be hard. Not going to be easy. It's going to be hard. And I use that because it's not that involving as a topic. But when things get hard, what makes me do the actions that I need to do to get to what I want to have? And it's that why that accompanies that declaration. So why, I had a discussion once, and it was I want to quit smoking. And I said, okay, well, what does that end up looking like? This, they said, well, okay, well, I want to be healthy. So that example actually happened. And the individual said, I want that because if I'm not healthy, I will not be around to see my grandchildren. That's a pretty compelling why. When the health was not in its ideal state at the time. So that why is what pushes you to those actions, which can sometimes be hard. And for me, the declaration brings me to that call of action, but it also brings me into now. And we know the power of now, because that little voice is going to bring me in the past and say, yeah, but, and it's going to put that fear, doubt, and worry in my mind. So how do I come back to now? And thank you, little voice, for sharing. But what can I do right now? So that declaration centers me on the power of that focus of now. I've actually taken the practice to a different step. I don't have a to-do list anymore. I do, but it's in disguise. My to-do list is categorized with declarations. And I know it's maybe pushing it to the limit, but my to-do list for the house, for the home, for the yard is I live in an ideal setting, home-wise. It's structured differently than that, but it states where it almost says I live in paradise. So in order for that to be true, then I need to make it look like paradise. I may need to make it feel like paradise. I need to make it feel comfortable, so that my home area, my office, everything makes me feel that way. So when I need to do work chores, they're not work chores. It's working towards something that I want.
Mark, I think that speaks to your be, do, have philosophy, right?
Yeah.
As opposed to the have, do, be. Can you speak into the be, do, have with respect to the declaration?
Oh yeah, thank you for that. We live in a society of have, do, be. If I could just have the ideal job, I can do what I like and I can be happy. If I can just have the ideal partner in my life, I can do, and you can fill in the blank, and I can be whatever. If I could just have $1 million, I could do this and I could be. But the problem is have, do, be. The problem with that is you're waiting to the have. You're waiting to have that situation, but it's upside down, because in order to have something, you have to do something first. And in order to do something, you have to be in a certain state. So how do you trick your mind? How do you condition yourself? How do you motivate yourself in that being mode so that you can do what you need to do and then have what you need to have. And that's where declaration ties in. It ties into that action mode, not action items, but action mode of motivating you into moving towards something instead of away from something else. Very often when we talk about our coaching conversations and we talk about the topics, very often the topics show up in a way that it's formulated in the way of what we don't want anymore, what we're trying to get rid of, what we're trying to correct. And the declaration is very often a way to say, okay, well, if it wasn't that way, what would it look like? What it would look like this. So you're going towards something instead of running away from something else. So your being, it needs to change. How am I being right now? So that I can do something in order to have something.
I want to bring full circle. Thanks, Mark. The Ben Zander thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the Karen brought up, and giving them an A to start. It allows them to be themselves. It allows them to kind of pick their own development. It's not a course that's structured for you to get from A to Z. It's I'm starting with Z in mind, and how am I going to help bring myself there? So living into having that A already, you can create your own development. You can soar in a way that a normal structured one size fits all program will not serve everybody. But if you're the master of your destiny, you get a chance to kind of create your own curriculum to earn the A that you have already been given.
I like pinging off of you, Ian, it's right back to what the coaching opens up when you choose that conversation is they have their way forward, their own way, unique way forward. So by writing it down in their words, they are now describing how that looks for them to get to live as if they've already achieved the A, because they've already come in with the rigor. And so many of our overachievers, right? This can really impact them. You see it I had an overachiever daughter. It can cause so much anxiety in them when they're always trying to get that mark, and just allowing them permission to do it their way is huge. And there's, been teachers over the years. There was one teacher that called Jenna and called us and said, she has an incredible creative writing skill. She is an amazing writer, but it will get in her way when she gets to university. This is in grade 7 and 8. We know what we need. We're training them for university. But he said, I don't want her to lose this. This is a gift she has. So he asked permission for us to modify her curriculum to allow her to continue to use this creative gift in her writing. He says, I'll work with her to make sure she's still prepared, but I don't want her to lose that gift she has. Really special when you meet a teacher that sees that and doesn't beat, that gift outside of them. So yeah, Ian, I love what you just said there. And I know, Mark, using your own words, we're right back to that. When the declaration practice that you taught us, you literally have us write down our words and then create that declaration. You don't tell us what words to use. You allow us to look at those words, write them in a way that serves us, and then make them present state, not future stated, as if how would you connect? So it's pretty cool. So I'm doing the connection here, Ian. You're so bang on about the giving the A, what it opens up.
It's we find ourselves in those situations where let's say we're studying. So let's say giving the A, I have to read my book. I have to do my homework. I have to clean the yard. I have to work out more. I have to go on a diet. And that I have to is overwhelming. And it doesn't mean anything. And it's not a call to action.
It's also screaming to me, I don't want to fail. I don't want to fail. And that becomes the why but
Yeah.
that's not the deeper why. That's like the fear why, if that makes any sense.
Good friend of mine and a public speaker who also happens to be an incredible survivor. He's a double lung and heart transplant survivor. All the odds were stacked against him as he was growing up, and he's now an incredibly generous contributor to society and to youth and people. And he's written a few books. And I was one of his, and he's been a coach of mine. He got me changing my language from I have to I get to. And his name is Marc Black. And Marc talks about one of the things that he hates the most is taking out the garbage. I have to take out the garbage. I just hate it, he says. And he switched his mind, his words from I have to I get to. And it's amazing. So, because he now says, I get to take out the garbage. Why? Because I'm lucky. I produce money and I live in a household where we produce garbage. We're lucky that we get to a point where we're consuming and where we have all the necessities of life, and we're so lucky that we produce this garbage that we have to get this residue of our life. And I get to take it to the road because somebody generously takes it away from us and keeps our environment clean. So that changes the whole way. And I would say a few days after that, it was winter, and I was looking at the ice in the dog run, and it was just terrible for dogs. If you have dogs, ice and dogs don't go together. And we had a pile of rocks, and we said, okay, we need to put the rocks on the ice so it creates traction and melts the ice. And it's now pouring rain and ice pellets, and I'm outside putting rocks on the ice, and I'm looking inside. I get to do this. I get to do. So it's a shift. But you know what? It was true. I got to put the rocks because I had the rocks. I was lucky. Otherwise, it would have been in trouble. I get to do it. Sometimes I say, oh, I'm doing hard work in there. And I say, I get to do this. A lot of people pay a gym membership to do this level of exercise, and I get to do it for free on my property. I love the shoveling this pile of dirt. So it's a mental shift, to your point, Ian, and it's an important one, the mind shift on having to do something and getting to do it because we know it's getting us to something else. And getting back to my earlier example of my declaration, my work stuff, which is it's coming to mind now, is every day at home is just another day in paradise. It might sound cheesy. Every day at home is just another day in paradise. That means that when I have to rake the leaves, it's not a chore. It's every day at home is just another day in paradise. And I get to do this.
I think it just speaks to our words have weight. I don't think we realize how much weight they have until we're confronted with something like this, right? Where somebody will throw the garbage metaphor, for lack of a better term, in their face, right? Like, oh, wow, I never thought about it that way, which is a huge part of what coaching helps support, is that opportunity to see the way you're speaking about things in a different light, to see your situation from a different light. And then for you to start picking up on the possibly negative commentary that you're throwing at a lot of the way that you look or see things. And then it's a paradigm shift to see the declaration where it's already happened. It's a positive thing. It's supporting my life. Even though the actions that need to happen may be physically and mentally hard for you to overcome, but the positive attitude will shift the energy around. It's not that hard, or it's not that big a deal, or it's just 5 more minutes, or it's only one more workout, or it's only one more salad. Like it doesn't have to be a big deal that we often make it out to be.
A woman came to me a few years ago and wanted to know if I would coach her, and anyways, it ended up the situation she was in, she needed a different kind of professional support. So I had said, I can't right now, you need to get that first, because it was very serious that she needed to address it. And she said to me, she was sitting there, and I always make sure they have a pen and paper in front of them, right? And she said, you know what I say? Tomorrow I'll be good enough. And that's what keeps me going. So I got her, I said, will you write that down for me? And she did. And I said, can you write that as if tomorrow's today? How would you write that? And I said, just look at it. And she wrote, I am good enough. And she started to cry. I said, that's you. And she needed, and she walked away, she took that piece of paper and she folded it. And I said, now walk forward and hold that paper in front of you. That's your mirror of you. And I know that really made a difference. She didn't come back to me for coaching. She didn't need it. She dealt with what she needed to deal with. But thank you, Marc, for that. Because I don't know if I would have known how to do that. But it was as simple as, so that's what I want to say about this practice, that yes, there's a process that we use, but it can be as easy as getting people, when you hear a narrative of this, something being repeated, like I'm never going to be good enough, and you'll hear it now you're going to hear, and how you can get them to write those words down and turn it around, saying, okay, pretend this is already happened. How would you make that statement? It is liberating. I think that, my famous saying, your thoughts are like a bad neighborhood, don't go there alone. And I know, Marc, part of the practice allows us to kind of bypass that first. And because our thoughts get really, really limit us and get murky. And then it allows us to use, then the practice has us doing some kind of visualization and imagination, and putting yourself in a future state, and then allowing you to get the words that show up then. I think that's a really cool thing to be able to learn to practice, even if you do it for yourself.
Mhm.
Well, it is touted as one of the self-coaching, I guess, methodologies, if you want to do it that, but it's way more than that, because it can be done in a drop of a hat, at the drop of a hat. It follows that old, I've seen it as an old Chinese proverb, but somebody also told me it had a biblical reference to it, and I haven't found it yet because I haven't dug deep enough yet. But thoughts, feelings, actions, results is usually goes with, be careful your thoughts, because your thoughts will lead to your feelings. Be careful your feelings, because your feelings will lead to your actions, and your actions will obviously lead to your results. So it's written more eloquently than that in many places, but it's so true and so logical. And the process follows that, because it kind of tricks your mind. Because if we all look at the things that hold us back, very often are things, the topics of coaching are things where we don't feel like we have control. Now, notice I didn't say we don't have control. I said we don't feel like we have control. So sometimes when we think about it, and we think about, okay, what does the situation look like right now? What can we see? What can we hear? What can we feel about that situation? And we're there, and we acknowledge it, and we name it, like we've said so many times. And we say, what if it could be different? What if it could be better? What if it could be ideal? So let's imagine that for a second, and let's see what that looks like, feels like, sounds like, who's involved. What can we notice about that? And then you take that and you take the words that come to mind and you write them down, and then you take those words and put a sentence in which forms your declaration, and then you keep reading it and you keep reading it and you keep reading it, and then so those were your thoughts, but now you're reading that and feelings are coming out, because you're thinking, hey, I can do this. Hey, this can actually happen. What happens is you're getting back that sense of control that you thought you didn't have, because just the mere fact of making that declaration, you have now, at that very point in time, at that very location, taken control of the situation by creating that declaration, by making that baby step of saying, this is what the situation is going to look like in a positive way. You're taking control, even if you haven't done any action. To your earlier point, Ian, there's no action yet, but you've already taken control because you made the decision, you made the commitment to yourself or to others through that declaration. And then with that clarity of the why, well, now let's follow up with an action plan, the baby steps, and let's see where this takes us. And when it comes back to those action items, when it's hard, well, then that's when the why of your declaration comes in. And that's what makes it so powerful. It's kind of magical when you think about it. But it is, to your earlier point, Karen, that little neighborhood up there, your thoughts, they are the obstacle. So this is a way of handling your little voice, saying, okay, I feel you, I get you. What are we going to do about it? Well, here's a declaration. Are you with me? Okay, let's go. But it's that inner communication, that declaration. It is such a powerful thing.
It's like a little life hack to get out of that thought feeling, same result cycle, because all you just keep butting your head up against, I don't know what, I don't know how, I don't know who, I don't know where, I don't know when. And you just keep banging your head up against that wall. But in this process, you're envisioning what it's like to be over the wall without any of that. Then you get a chance to kind of feel what that's all about, what that could be like, and how that would support you, and how it would support others, and how it engages your why. And then because it takes you out of that initial loop, you now have a new loop with new thoughts and new possibilities and new potential that you can't even imagine until you feel what it's like to already be there. And then you get glimpses of what that's like by taking those smaller steps. Oh, I went to the gym today. That felt really good. Ooh, so I can feel good now, even though I'm not necessarily where I want to be long-term. I feel good about what I did today. I feel good about signing up for that next class tomorrow. So it's getting out of that repetitive pattern and into a new pattern that feels better than where you were. And I think that's where the momentum, builds. But without the declaration practice, you stay in that old version of yourself.
I'm having a moment here. I don't know if it makes sense or you agree with this. I had a shift. I said, so often it's a goal. If I could put it up here. When we do the declaration, it's our reset button. So there's not striving this. It's just, I'm resetting. It just grounds me back, and it grounds me back. I've had mine written down and now memorized for 3 years. I truly see it as my reset button. I don't feel I'm not achieving a goal. Do you see the difference? So my beating myself, I can get back, because you just described it, Ian, so well. Like one workout at a time, or whatever you're doing for yourself, right? To go back and hit the reset button, and I did it today. And so it seems to be gentler on how you navigate to fully live in this declaration. I wanted to touch on something today, because when we taught this, if you don't mind, is when leaders make declarations, when we're in a position of power, whether it's a parent or, where there's a hierarchy, and you make a statement that, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make sure that we have work-life balance. I'm just making, I'm coming in an organization. This is my work. I'm going to really work hard on that. And we make this declaration out loud as a leader. And what I learned with myself as a manager, well, now they're watching you. Is her actions and her language, is she walking the talk? So the power of making declarations out loud, and it's slightly different than a promise, because now they're looking to you in the bigger container of supporting others. So I became super mindful of what I was saying because of my place in the org chart in an organization that the follow through for me and the stake of a declaration to me felt very, very important and critical to my integrity and my character.
It is. A declaration in that context involves people actually buying in, following, engaging. It requires probably at that point also the element of the why, because the declaration by itself could be interpreted many different ways. Another one of my favorite sayings is nothing has a meaning until you give it a meaning. So if I hear a declaration, I'm interpreting it. So the collective why, the big why for the organization in the context where the leader evokes a declaration is critical for the same reasons as it is for yourself, because it's that call to action. The declaration itself is strong. It's a goal. It actualizes the goal into now, and it's a call to action, but the why solidifies that. And it brings us to that level of clarity. So if you relate that to the relationship possibilities in action model, that relationship is important at that level of that declaration as to why, what's important to me, that clarity. Because now to actualize that, to achieve that, we now have to look at the possibilities. Well, a lot is going to have to happen if that's going to be true. And then we go into yeah, but mode. And when you go into yeah, but mode, then you got to be clear on the why, because the why is going to say, here's why we do it. Okay, well, now let's find a way. And that possibilities kicks into action mode to get it done. So that's where they tie in very much so at an organizational level, for sure. And thanks for bringing that up, because it's a very important thing. We hear declarations all the time. We hear them from government leaders. We hear them from aspiring government leaders, especially. But we hear them also from organizations within, the rallying speech of the troops on where we're going to be, those goal settings, those vision statements, those mission statements. They're in the form of a declaration. They rally everything else that follows. So they are really, 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 really critical. They create the culture and what's going to be done and how it's going to get done. It's an important step. Ian, you look pensive.
No, my wife's having a loud conversation with my kids. But what I was going to ask Karen is so I don't know your specific situation here, but if you made a declaration for the organization, or was it a declaration for you?
Well, it's something that is valued by you as a leader, and you're taking a leadership role and saying, this is what I want to make happen in the organization. And I'm going to, work with the organization to, make steps towards that.
Okay. Sorry. So then this is my question, because this is what was boiling up inside of me was, so you make a declaration on behalf of the organization and what you want to make happen. How do you get your organization or the staff to, as Marc said, buy in?
I'm going to use a different word. You invite them in. There's no buy and sell on this stuff when it's a declaration. Martin Luther King said, I have a dream. He wasn't looking for a buy-in, right? He had a clear sense of what the why of his and what he wanted to make happen, and followers will come. And I work really, really hard with leaders to say, and I have a metaphor called the red tomatoes. Not everybody's going to trust you at first. There's been a lot of letdowns over time. I know I've let people down. So it's a declaration is something that you have made a decision that you are going to walk and talk and make this part of how you're going to lead. And it's not something I say, if you're going to make this statement, you can't get too busy for it. You can't delegate this one. You see the shift? So the buy-in is invitation, and it's one conversation at a time, and it's modeling it, and it's stepping in, it's, choosing to use your voice and your influence and your way of being. It's to be able to support that. And there's a lot of good leaders out there that they know that that's a stepping in, the being part, Mark. This is how they want to be. And sometimes it's contradictory to what's around them, but they know deep in their soul, they're typically really worried about the people. They see the carnage, the depletion, the impact it's having on people. And they don't want to, they want to influence that.
I like that practical perspective, Karen. Ian, in the practice of change management, the first two steps are awareness and desire. And awareness translates into why and why now. And desire translates into what's in it for me. So to answer your question in part, from my perspective and experience, until it's clear why and why now and what's in it for me, then we're not ready to move to the next step, which is what do we need to consider? So the possibilities. So your question relates again to the relationship possibilities and action mode. It happens in relationship. The engagement, the rallying of the troops happens in the relationship mode, which is critical. And we know in our conversations that you have to spend the time and the effort and the attention and the exchange in the relationship mode in order to get that commitment. How do we say it? Possibilities without relationship lacks commitment. So that commitment comes from that relationship mode discussion on what's important for everybody. So what's important for you is not just a one-on-one sometimes conversation. Sometimes it's a collective one. What's important for everybody here. And of course, you're not going to satisfy everybody's what's important. But very often you find a declaration statement from senior management or a corporate organization where a lot of people can find a way that they can find their what's in it for me, that what's important for me in there, and their why now. I see more and more corporations adopting the communication level, the communication methodology. It's called the four step. Here's the issue. Here's what the issue was causing. Here's what happens if we do nothing, and here's what we want to do. And the declaration comes here, but they give a context as to why, what led to it, instead of just saying from now on, this is going to happen, or this is our new situation, or this is what we're shooting for. They give a context because they know that critical change management, those two critical management components of why and why now are really important, and what's in it for me.
I think you nailed it really early on, Ian, about a declaration. You said something, it's about and then setting an intention. I feel like we're going right back to that word that you brought in at the very beginning. So it needs to be the head and the heart together, that you're setting it. It could be a corporate will, but you make your it's your declaration, if you know what you tailor it to that intention, because that keeps it, you align and authentic and all the things that leaders, I know many leaders, most leaders, if not, a good chunk of them, that's what they want. They want to be seen as, that they can be counted on, and that they deliver, and that they do good for people. So I think you nailed it earlier about how the declaration really does the why, Mark, and then it just sets your intention. And when you can speak that way through it versus as a PowerPoint, you know what I'm saying? When you can narrate that, give the language around it, your why, and then ask people what's yours, it could be huge.
We can have fun. We can have fun with this too, it can be fun. As far as practicing, my recipe book, my recipe folder is entitled I Cook Amazing Dishes. That is my recipe folder. It's not a recipe folder. It's not a to-do list. It's not a collection of recipes. It's I Cook Amazing Dishes. I can tell you that since I've adopted that, the quality of the recipes in there, pretty astounding. I'm pretty proud of myself. And I cook amazing dishes.
Mark, it's funny because in my folders for my emails, I used to have different, well, I still have all these folders for all these personal things and business things. And I used to have one that was just health. And I recently changed it to exceptional health. And it's not like that word is going to change anything in the interim, but it's just like, it seemed like for the longest time, I'm just putting all these like appointments and things that are wrong with me, and everything was going into this health bucket. And it was just like, I just didn't like that. I'm like, I want to change the vibe that's going on with this folder. It's exceptional health. Everything goes into the exceptional health bucket now. Anyways, it's small, but it impacts the way that you think about certain things and the way that you feel about it. And I wanted to bring this back before we ended. It was changing the way that we feel, like the journey for like, oh, I got a bunch of muddled thoughts, but we set goals. Oftentimes we set goals, but the goal doesn't feel good until you get there. Like that's the typical version of how we set a goal, because we want to feel like that. And then we feel miserable all the way till we get there. But what this practice is capable of doing for people is helping people feel that now, as opposed to waiting until the end. So if you can tap into the feeling of it, and that's your goal, then you never lose. You are always there. You always have the potential to go from where you are this morning to a better feeling place by tapping into and doing something that supports that feeling, that is in alignment with your declaration.
There's a saying that goes, change the way you look at things and the things around you will change. And I buy into that, and I've always bought into that. But the thing is, I haven't always lived that, because I've heard that, but I didn't listen to it. So change the way you look at things and the things around you would change is a very powerful saying if you can live it, but living it is not easy. So to your point, tricking your mind and changing your perspective and changing the way you look at things and your way of being does change the way you look at things. And that's when you can do the actions and the things around you will change. So I understand that now, but I didn't always. And the declarations have come a long way in contributing to that shift.
I loved your both of what you said about your narration of yourselves and how you, like, I when you said health to exceptional health, I just felt good. All of a sudden I felt good. Yeah, me too. So there was something about when you added that word. So that's all I would say. And your recipe thing really hit my heart, Mark, because I love to cook. And of course I tell Glenn, like when I make something, I did such a good job. And he goes, oh yeah, look at your ego. So there's, but it was rocking. I'm rocking, right? And as you know, I'm a butter tart queen. Yeah, I'd like to brag about them a lot. But all I would say, what struck me as my wrap up, which I love about the declaration, is you have this bucket, but start small, but don't be small. Don't be small. Really, I love the word fun. Like, we take ourselves so darn seriously, and it's easy to get in this world these days to feel pretty serious about a lot of things. So bringing some joy and fun in whatever the piece that you do is really important.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
This was fun.
It was fun. Start small.
But don't be small.
But don't be small.
See you next time on Coaching, Coffee, and Conversation.